Today we're going to be interviewing George Washington again on the Through the Eyes of George podcast, YouTube channel, and the POTUS1 Instagram. Welcome, George. How are you doing? What's going on? Thank you, John, for this opportunity to interview again and to get the POTUS1 perspective. And I think there's a lot going on. And I think that most people, if I had to pinpoint it into one thing, that they don't realize that they're being influenced by culture through a lot of different things like TV, academia, movies, uh, the news, social media, music, and they don't realize it because why would they? They're just living their lives. And we wonder why things are going on in today's culture. And for one, so that's the one thing that I could say. Uh, I think that it's kind of like the book Brave New World or Atlas Shrugged or 1984. And I've been reading since I've been back, and I think people don't think that that's true. But if you look at the similarities, it's pretty daunting to look at to see that the parallels and differences between those books, fictional books, and today's culture. And our politicians today, they're bought out by lobbyists, by whether it's foreign interests or APEC people or uh, lobbyists within our country, the military industrial complex, other means. I just don't think people realize or even want to conceptualize that because they're so focused on themselves and their families, which they should be. But what's driving your influence? It's culture. And we are in charge of culture. Parents are in charge of culture, and parents are who drive what the posterity of our country and republic goes towards because they're the ones that produce the posterity and future generations. And moms and dads are the most important thing in our culture today. And I think it's imperative that as parents that the, we step up like they have been doing. And I think more and more will see that as they are today, protecting their kids from the anti human movement that is transgenderism in our schools. Because little kids don't need to know, 3, 4, 5, 10 year olds don't need to know about that. They're just trying to figure out their what is life, how to have good conversations with people their own age and get along. Why do you need to introduce sexuality to children? That doesn't make sense. Unless you're pushing a agenda from Baphomet, Ishtar, or Isis, or any of these ancient deities back in the day. And that's really another thing that's going on is where did all these ancient deities and gods go that people worshipped back in the day in ancient biblical spiritual times, pagan times? Where did they go? They're in our calendars, they're in our holidays, they're in our schools and educational systems, they're in our TV, our movies, our news, our academia, our music. That's where they are. That's where those ancient deities are, whether people want to believe it or not. And it was a lot less than in my time, but you can definitely see these influences of ancient descent in our culture today. And I think that these parents of today's culture are deprogrammed for the most part, and they're deprogrammed from being brainwashed to think that they don't have control over their families and how to guide and help their kids because the Operation Paperclip and Operation Mockingbird that has influenced our culture, and many things that have influenced our culture, to think that the government is supposed to parent the kids is, I think, is one of the biggest things that you could see is what's going on today. And I think that it's important for parents to uh, take hold of what God gave them to be a parent, and with a guiding, gentle hand, guide their families, because our Lord and Savior will be there. And yeah, that's what's going on. That is a lot of information. And, I do agree with you that it is refreshing or rejuvenating to see parents more so now than in past years stand up for their kids in culture. Not that they weren't doing it before, but I think that there is a lot of deprogramming going on where parents feel like they actually have a voice to stand up for their kids, or maybe they didn't know that they could in school board meetings or in any educational public school setting. And it is really refreshing to see that, because parents are the lifeline to our culture, because they hold the key to the posterity of our future, the future generations of people. So it's really awesome to see that too. And I do also agree with you that parents can look at homeschooling. I think that's a great option as well. I personally like homeschooling, and public school, if that's an option, if that's what people choose, that's okay too. Everybody has their own preference with school, but it is awesome to see parents really, in today's culture, take a stand for their children like never before in the United States. So, what do you think of Donald Trump and the 2024 election? Well, I think Donald Trump got it right with his domestic economic policy and his foreign policy. And I think deep down, that's why people like Donald Trump. I think his personality, though, uh, people think it's too much. But I think it does need refining, but whose personality and the things that they say don't need polishing or refining? We're not perfect. And when I was president, I was not perfect. Donald Trump is not perfect, and nobody is. And I don't think people think that those who vote for Trump think that we are separating the um, policy from the person from the politics. And I don't think people think that they can do that, but it's possible, because what else are we going to do? What options do we have? What else does our republic have to lose? And I think that people are mad because Trump got it right on a lot of things, like I said, on the economic and the foreign policy, and they don't want to admit that they're right, so they double down in their cognitive dissonance, and they're afraid to admit that they're wrong. And it's sad that those people know that it could be good for the country to vote for someone's economic and foreign policy, disregarding their personality if they don't like someone, and vote for the economic and foreign policy, which then in return would help their families and their communities. And we don't vote for a preacher. We don't vote for someone who's perfect, because sometimes pastors and preachers and spiritual leaders are not perfect. But then who is perfect? The only person that we know is perfect is Jesus Christ. And I don't think people realize that. They don't think the things that they're saying are going to come through, so then they just start beleaguering people because they disagree with them. And you guys worship me. You worship me, and I certainly am not perfect. When I was POTUS1, and I certainly am not perfect now. I had enslaved people. I am and still am very sensitive to criticism. I mean, who isn't sensitive to criticism? I had countless medical issues and problems. I I couldn't have kids of my own because I was sterile, And I didn't know what I was doing when I was POTUS1, but yet still you guys worship me like I was a deity of some kind because I was the first president. You know, there were other people before me that were leading the country. Um, and you're not supposed to worship me. You're supposed to worship God. You're supposed to worship your creator or whatever spirituality that you believe in. Us presidents are not gods. We're not Nephilim giants. We're not fallen angels or whatever it is that people proclaim presidents to be. We're not perfect. And you look towards the president of the United States to solve your problems. And you know that your problems start with you, but you're just projecting your problems onto other people to solve them because you don't want to solve them yourself. And that's why people want to vote for Trump, or well, some people anyway, in the 2024 election because they want to fix their own problems and they want to help their families and their communities because they want cheap gas, cheap groceries. They want the ability to speak their mind for their families and their communities and to protect their families with the Second Amendment or without it. And I think they also don't want retribution from the government in doing those things because I think people get so wrapped up in wanting to be right that they forget that we're in this together. It's us. There are more of us than there are of the government. There are you guys in the republic are greater in number than them that are in the world. Remember that. The Orsini family, the Astor family, the Rothschild, the Cologne family, the Warburgs, I think is what their name is. There are more of you guys and citizens than there are of them. They're just manipulating you through the culture. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think Donald Trump is going to be president, whether people like it or not. And we're going to see a lot of legal things happen between now and the election. And a lot of things, maybe a black swan event. A group of black swan is called a bank. And I think there may be a bank collapse. There may be another 9/11, whatever that may be. I don't know. I just think that people need to pay attention and not get so emotional. Because if you're going to get emotional about Donald Trump, you should get emotional about what the Obamas did to our country, what the Clintons did, what the Bushes did to our country, and especially what Joe Biden has done to our country. If you're going to get emotional about Trump, get emotional about those people as well. So that's what I think is going to happen in the 2024 election. Wow. I'm sure you've been thinking about that for a while now. And I do agree with you that people look towards politicians or government officials in a subconscious or conscious way for deity worship, whether they know it or not. And that's why they get so emotional or have so much angst when someone doesn't do something right or say something correctly. And I think that it's hard for people sometimes to separate the person from the politics. And I do agree with you about Donald Trump that his policy of economics and his foreign policy is definitely spot on and definitely in terms of keeping America first, like how you did with your non-interventionalist in your September 19th, 1796 farewell address. And I think that people have lost their way in understanding that. And that if we're so consumed by all these things outside of our country, then we can't take care of our problems. And thinking that if we try to take care of other people's problems, it'll take care of our own. When really, the first step to taking care of our issues, our personal life, work life, family life, is ourselves taking responsibility and accountability for those things, not the government, not politicians. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the interview. and looking forward to talking to you again. Thank you, Mr. President. This has been the POTUS1 perspective on the Through the Eyes of George podcast, YouTube channel, and the POTUS.1 Instagram. Thank you for viewing this video and looking forward to the next one.